Okay, we're continuing with Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes by me, Pete Rogers, alphabetical order. We're doing Abraham Maslow. He's a psychologist from America who became famous for his pyramid, hierarchical pyramid of our needs. And he places at the bottom our physiological needs, food, water, shelter. Then safety. Then love and belonging. Then self-esteem. And then finally self-actualization to develop our skill and our areas of interest to the highest level. Okay, so that's sort of what he envisions as an ideal life. Notice there's no mention of religion in here. But anyways, this became pretty famous. And let's take a look at some of his quotes here. He said, "One's only failure is failing to live up to one's possibilities. If you plan on being anything less than you are capable of being, you will probably be unhappy all the days of your life. What is necessary to change a person is to change his awareness of himself." I do think, though, there's some truth to this idea that we're happy when we pursue a good goal, when we know we're doing something positive, when we're improving, we're making progress, okay? And a lot of us are stuck in tedious jobs because you get paid, and they don't pay you because your job is fun. They pay you because it's work, and they want it done, and they don't want to do it themselves, or they don't know how to do it. So the hard thing in life is to find something you like that you can either get money for it, or to structure your life in such a way that you have time to do the things that you want to do. Very few people are rich enough they can do whatever they want, but that's a very small, that's about 1/10 of 1%. Okay, most of us, we got to work a lot. All right, let's see what else. He says, self-actualizers are very defined by a life mission. Yeah, like with my old ex-wife, I sort of just was happy to have her be like a landlord. Even though she made us move to a new house that I hated, it was her problem. The old house that was magnificent was my house. Now it was her problem to manage it. But the beauty of it was it freed me up to write and make YouTube videos, which is what I kind of wanted, so that was okay. Let's see. He says, the only people I know who are happy are the ones who are working well at something they consider important. Yeah, you want to feel that what you're doing is worthwhile and good. A musician must make music. An artist must paint. A writer must write if he is ultimately to be at peace with himself. What a man can be, he must be. This is called self-actualization. Okay. And, I think, if you're a highly motivated individual and you got creative potential in an area, then you want to push that. But, not everybody has it. Not that many people have that, okay? And you can be happy doing whatever it is, My mom, she was happy with her family, happy with her friends, happy with her positive activities. Okay, it refers to man's desire for self-fulfillment, namely to the tendency for him to become actually in what he is potentially, to become everything he is capable of becoming. The most beautiful fact, the most wonderful good fortune that can happen to any human being is to be paid for doing what he passionately loves to do. Okay, and usually that means taking a lot less pay, because the thing that's a lot of fun is usually not going to be the thing that pays the most. Okay, Abraham Maslow. To invent or create, you must have the arrogance of creativeness. Yeah, and I think what that comes down to is you have to believe you can do something better than what's been done already before. So you have to have a lot of confidence to go for it, because you're not going to go for it unless you think you can make it. And if you think you can make it, that means you think you're better than what's been done before. So that's perhaps a little arrogance, but you have to have it, or you're not really, or you don't got it. So just the way it is. And that's why the best creators usually are devoted Christians with a sense of destiny. Look at all the great creative genius. You will see that's the majority of them. Yeah, there's lots of exceptions, but that's the majority of them. Okay, the next guy is an academic professor, and he was a preacher too. And he's sort of in the humanities himself, and he's a little annoyed at what he sees happen in the humanities. Okay, he says, the biggest haters of the humanities are the professors of the humanities. They hate literature, and they are trying to destroy it. The solution to bad literary theory is to develop a good literary theory. Revelations 12 is about war in heaven, conflict between the city of God and the city of man. Scientism is the antichrist of the humanities. And public schools are the enemy of church, family, and the individual and freedom. Yeah, so he's right. So basically it is true The university system has been infiltrated by people who hate the university system. And they want to get rid of the liberal arts, the humanities, the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans, and turn people just into trade school. Because those type of people are relative simpletons. They don't have as much ability to be articulate and to express a contrary thought. Okay, I can tell you, the personality of most doctors is like accountants. What am I supposed to do? I will do that. To actually think and challenge the status quo, that's rare. It's only the real smart ones do that. The ones who read and are interested in digging down to the truth. That's a rare thing. But that's what it takes to improve anything. Okay, James Matthew. In England, justice is open to all, like the Ritz Hotel. Yeah, if you got money, you get a better deal than the average person. All right, the next guy we'll talk about was an English novelist. His name is Somerset Maugham. He lived from 1864 to 1965. He was a novelist and a playwright in England. He was also homosexual, but he did marry and have a child with his wife. Okay? And I'm going to tell you, the best writers are Christians. Yeah, there's lots of exceptions. Oscar Wilde was a homosexual, and he was married. I think he even had a kid too, but he kind of abandoned them. But he was so clever and so funny and articulate. I loved all of that. Okay, but they're not going to write, a deep novel. His novel, The Portrait of Dorian Gray, was entertaining, but I wouldn't call it a deep philosophical novel. Okay, Somerset Maugham. The crown of literature is poetry. It's the end and aim. Poetry is the most sublime activity of the human mind. It is the achievement of beauty and delicacy. The writer of prose can only step aside when the poet passes. To acquire the habit. Okay, so he loves poetry. Okay, that's beautiful. And some of those all-time great poems, look at Edgar Allan Poe. It was many, many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea that a maiden that lived whom you may know, whose name was Annabel Lee. I mean, that's awesome stuff. And The Raven, that's great. Pretty hard to do. The crazy rapper, Eminem, is like a genius-level poet, even though other than that, he's a scumbag. Okay, Somerset Maugham continues. To acquire the habit of reading is to construct for yourself a refuge from almost all the miseries of life. The only important thing in a book is its meaning that it has for you. Tolerance is another word for indifference. Yeah, they teach you to be indifferent to the things that harm you. You should not like them. That's public school brainwashing, okay? You have to make judgments all the time. You have to differentiate all the time. You have to judge. How do you make any decisions? Okay, love is only a trick played on us to achieve continuation of the species. I think there's some truth in that. Because, man, you're attracted to a woman, you just like her. And you ignore her faults. And if you didn't do that, you'd never go out with her. You'd never get married and have kids, I think. Impropriety is the soul of wit. Yeah, there's some truth in that, too. Again, to say something clever, you have to believe you're able to say something clever. You have to believe you're able to go beyond the status quo, the average, the conformist way of doing things. Okay, Somerset Maugham continues. The ability to quote is a serviceable substitute for wit. Experience is your material for writing. Writing is the supreme solace. Yeah, some people write just to, deal with the issues in their life, and it makes them feel better. They journal it. We do not write because we want to. We write because we have to. I have that feeling. I sort of feel like, what the hell am I going to do? Am I going to sit around all day? Or I know I've got a book in my head that's good and it should be written and no one else is doing it, and I'm going to do it. And then that comes with a sacrifice. You can't do anything else for that whole day. You have to just crank all day a lot of times because you have to be able to see the book in your head from the beginning to the end. And you do that, you get momentum. So if you started it at 7 o'clock in the morning, you don't want to let it sit till the next day or maybe the next weekend when you got another day off because you won't have it clear in your head all over. You'll kind of be starting over again. Okay, he continues. I never met an author who admitted to people that people did not buy his book because it was dull. I actually think that's a fundamental problem with writers, is if you want to be a good writer, you have to have something to write about. So you have to have knowledge. Number two, you have to have a voice as a writer, enough personality to carry it through and make it interesting. So that's why I think writers should study comedians. They should study public speakers. And in the end, you should be an interesting conversationalist if you're going to be a good writer. I know there's some exceptions to that. What I've seen is some writers are very able to stay within verisimilitude, meaning to just convey the story as it was and keep everything real tight. So each one's got their own style. Like Michael Crichton could keep everything suspenseful, keep on ratcheting up the suspense. I can't help crack at a joke, every 10 minutes, so I can't stay suspenseful. I'm always wanting to crack jokes. I'm half Irish, half Puerto Rican. It's just built into me. Okay, Somerset Maugham continues. The best style of writing is the one that surprises you, that entertains you, that makes great. Oh, that's my comment. Okay, that's not his comment. So Somerset Maugham says the best style is the one you don't notice. And that would be a typical comment of a novelist, to just tell the story and keep the writer out of it. Whereas for me, I think the best story is one that's full of surprises, entertainment, jokes, great metaphors. It's lively. That's my style. Voltaire had said, every style is good except for the one that is boring. As long as it's entertaining, it's good. Okay, Somerset Maugham. A good rule for writers is don't explain over much. Then he says, the world doesn't know what to make of originality. It is startled out of its comfortable habits of thought, and its first reaction is one of anger. I can tell you, in science and in medicine, especially conventional medicine, when you say something unconventional and original, people get pissed off at you. They give you this sort of angry, scornful look. Like I told you, a typical thing, I was sitting in a big conference, and they're talking about this end-stage cancer cachectic patient who was dying. What should we do? Should we put in an intravenous line in and feed him through his veins? I'm like, why don't you give him testosterone? That's what people do when they want to build muscle. You want them to gain weight. You want them to build muscle. Well, testosterone is what does it. Why don't you give them testosterone? And everyone looked at me like, no one does that. And I'm like, well, why not? And I think the reason they don't give more testosterone to these weak old people is because drug companies don't want it. They'd rather have them hooked on 15 drugs than have them feeling strong again. Anyways, Somerset Maugham. I think the incidence of cardiac disease is exaggerated with testosterone replacement. The reason why I wouldn't do it unless there was no other choice is because once you get hooked down that path, you'll develop other problems and independence. Somerset Maugham. Good prose should resemble the conversation of a well-bred man. There are two good things in life, freedom of thought and freedom of action. If a nation values anything more than freedom, it will lose its freedom. And the irony of it is that if it values comfort or money that it values, it will lose those two. So basically, you lose everything if you don't have freedom. Yeah, okay. All right, the next one is another French writer, Guy de Maupassant. He lived from 1850 to 1893, so he died young at about 43. And I think it's because this guy was a bit of a jerk, okay? His hero was Gustave Flaubert, okay? Gustave Flaubert wrote Madame Bovary, who was a jerk, cheating on her husband. And I think he's a jerk. He was a pedophile, okay? And Guy de Maupassant, was always sleeping with all these prostitutes. And he got syphilis and died at a young age of syphilis. So I'm sorry, but if a person lives their life like a jerk and a fool, it's unlikely that I'm going to find them a good writer. I want a writer who overcame obstacles, who did something wonderful, heroic, okay? He's a person who I feel I'm more likely to have something to learn from, okay? Michael Crichton was this magnificent genius, okay? I really liked his books, all right? Tom Wolfe had magnificent style whereby he could do all kinds of tricks with punctuation and onomatopoeia that was beautiful. Victor Hugo told a magnificent story and kept it tight in verisimilitude, like Les Mis. Okay, Dostoevsky could greatly see the peaks and the depths of mankind. Okay, that's magnificent. Likewise for Charles Dickens. Okay. Anyways, this guy, he's got one funny quote. He says, the simplest of women are wonderful liars who can extricate themselves from the most difficult dilemmas with a skill bordering on genius. And I think there's some truth in that, in the sense that a guy, look how a man and a woman walk down the hall in a corporation, okay? The woman's staring at her phone, like saying to herself, I got a lot of stuff to do today. I don't want to waste my time talking to no nice guy loser. So the woman intrinsically is attractive. Men like women more than women like men. So she's constantly used to being bothered by men. How you doing, sweetheart? Hey, you're looking good today. And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. Get away from me, you scumbag. Get away. She's got 10 different excuses why she can't talk to you. So women are great at saying, I got to wash my hair tonight, or, my mother-in-law's coming over, whatever. My mother's coming over. They're very good at lying and BSing to get rid of men who annoy them. And they just become experts at that. They do it effortlessly. Whereas a guy, He walks down the hallway in a corporation, and he like has been sitting in his cubicle all day doing boring, tedious work. He wants to talk to somebody. He's lonely. He has a good joke or a story for the day, something he saw on the internet, social media, or read in a book, listened to in his car, whatever. He would like to talk. So what I'm trying to say is the man by nature is a show-off, and he's gregarious, extroverted. The woman by nature is, she saves her personality for her few close friends. Okay, she doesn't want to be chatting with all these nice guy losers that are hitting on her. So they're great at all that, deflections and stuff. And the woman, she analyzes you when you first talk to her. Why are you talking to me? Are you hitting on me? What do you want? Do I need to talk to this person for my job? Okay, so now here's sort of the highlight person of the day, Andre Maurois. I'm not that good at pronouncing French, but because I knew he was sort of the interesting guy, most interesting guy today, I'm wearing my French tie with Eiffel Towers on it. Okay, so he says, almost all great writers have as their motif the passage from childhood to maturity, the clash between the thrill of expectation and the disillusioning truth. That's a lot of them. Lost Illusion is the undisclosed title of every novel. I'd have to think about that one. I don't quite agree. Scrooge, Christmas Carol, the best novels are not like that, but certainly a lot of them are. That's sort of a coming of age type novel is like that. But, Les Mis, is that like that? No, I don't think so. A Tale of Two Cities, yeah, that's kind of like that. Quo Vadis, no, not really. Nor the greatest novels are not like that. Anyways, Brothers Karamazov is not like that. A little like that. All right, Andre Maurois, next quote. Writing is a difficult trade which must be learned slowly by reading great authors, by trying at the outset to imitate them, and then by daring to be original. I think you got to read a lot, because when you read a lot, you just get all the words flowing in your mind. You build up a vocabulary, you build up a familiarity with literature, and then you got to live your life so you got something interesting to say, so you have some knowledge, and you should be talking and joking around with your friends a lot, because that's where you practice telling stories and telling jokes with friends and family. Okay, yeah, that's how you get good at it. Okay. Next he says, the really great novel tends to be the exact negative of the author's life. Yeah. It's like Pride and Prejudice with Jane Austen. In her own life, she's all kind of lonely and sad, but she wrote her novels about, falling in love in England, on the edge of being an aristocrat. Okay, Andre Maurois, he says, he who has found a good wife has found great happiness, but a quarrelsome woman is like a roof that lets in the rain. Yeah, it's kind of like what Socrates says. Socrates said you should get married. If the woman is good to you, and you'll be happy, and if she's not good to you, you'll become a philosopher. Andre Maurois, people are what you make them. A contemptuous indifference turns into an enemy. A woman who, well treated, might have been an angel. Yeah, should always be nice to people. The old saying is you'll meet the same people going up the job ladder as you meet going down it. So why not make friends with people that you're going to talk to? All right, now here he is when he was speaking on 1940 from the Spirit of France. Okay, so this is when France went through some difficult times. He says, no country in the world has more reverence than France for a good literary education. Every middle-class Frenchman knows at least some of the classics by heart. He has been brought up by La Fontaine, Corneille, and Molière. The Comédie Française, which is the national theater, and the French Academy are public institutions, and a surprisingly great part of the nation takes an interest in their ceremonies. Very often in the course of the last 50 years, France was governed by professors. Whether it was a sound idea or not is another story, but it is a fact, and it shows the great importance attached by the Frenchmen to classical eloquence, to the proper use of words, to a simple and beautiful language. Okay, yeah, so France was seen, look at the expatriates after World War I. They went to Paris. That was the place to be, the cultured place. And that's kind of what he's getting at. He's basically claiming that France was like Athens compared to the rest of Europe, is what he's sort of claiming. Then he says, in the 1600s and the 1700s, at the courts of the last kings of France, idle men and women of infinite subtlety took pleasure in analyzing very minutely each other's feelings and thoughts. The result was this wonderful literature that goes from La Bruyère and Pascal to Stendhal and Marcel Proust. France became a country of very refined taste. The part played by her in modern Europe was in a way similar to that played by Greece in the ancient world. She took a pleasure in delicious simplicity. Other literatures may have had more strength, more romantic violence, but none had that mysterious perfection of the French literature. So André Maurois from The Spirit of France. Okay, so that was kind of interesting, and I had my experience. I've known some French guys, and old school French guys that were not much younger than this guy, and they had this pride in being French. They saw French as being more sophisticated than other Europeans and other people in general, and I think that was a good thing. But one of the things you notice, if you look closely at his quote, he said the French were sophisticated in the 1600s and the 1700s. That's before the French Revolution, because the French Revolution was in many ways like the Soviet Revolution, 1917, 1918, as a communist. It was an atheist revolution, and atheism destroys art. Plus, the lead up to the French Rev was Voltaire, who still had magnificent literary skill, but it was leading into Diderot, the philosophes, who were atheistic. And atheism, what does atheism say? It says that life has no meaning. And if you're going to go down that path, how are you going to create anything meaningful and inspiring if your default statement is that life has no meaning? That's why atheists stink at literature. They stink at art. They stink at almost anything cultural, because their foundational statement is that life has no meaning. Well, if you're going to tell me life has no meaning, why should I waste my time listening to you? That's why I think they all stink, because deep down they have nothing worthwhile to tell me. Okay? So anyways, that's our quotes for today. I hope you found it interesting. And, the best novelists, the best writers, they're Christians, okay? Because a Christian gives you a worldview that life has meaning and that God is a creator. We're created in his image. Therefore, we can create, after him, attempt to be like him. Anyways, I hope you found that helpful.